This is the engine noise it has. See if you can guess what it is. Okay, give you 10 guesses and the first 9 don't count. Alright, you're going to do the wiring for the coil packs and just shove it out of the way. Same with the injectors. Undo the clips, pull them out of the way, pull your 4 coil packs, put them off to the side, get the air tube off the valve cover so you can get the valve cover loose, and then we're going to go ahead and take the board. You need to take the timing cover off because you need to undo the clip on the crank sensor or the cam sensor. We're going to take the cam sensor off, and then we're going to pull this valve cover off. Alright, I got the intake cam back in. Got my homemade tool that holds the springs together so you can get the cams and everything lined up. You need 16 rollers in between this pin and that pin. And that's what we got. So we're going to go ahead and start sticking it back together. Alright, the thing that made me a little worrisome about this is the engine noise you heard was, quite a bit of it was the cam tensioner, which is this chain here. This is like a hydraulic pump. Top and bottom, this chain is just a continuous loop and it pushes the chain bottom and top. Now, when this goes bad, it's just basically weak and it just sags and it changes, flops around. Or it won't pump up. Oil pressure comes up from the oil pump to the back of the head into this thing, and it's like a hydraulic jack piston basically. And it keeps continuous pressure on that timing chain. What had me a little worried about this, this was a little bit dry when I took it apart. You can even see the tops of some of the lobes are a little shiny. I went ahead and took the oil filter off, and it was just nothing but gear oil. Probably 90 weight, 100 weight gear oil. Went and pulled the drain plug out, and it just come out gloop, gloop, gloop. It just barely come out. So that could be a good reason why it's making all this racket. Just there's a screen in this thing here that limits, you know, what can come up through here. And the easiest way to explain, if you put too heavy of an oil in an engine, it'll cavitate the oil pump. And what I'm talking about is, you know, if you've ever been in a boat, you nail the throttle and it just whoo, and it just makes that noise because it sucked all the water out in front of the propeller, and it can't get enough water, you know, to the propeller to keep up the forward motion. Well, that's basically the same thing an oil pump does. It'll suck the oil that's around the pickup tube up, but then that oil is so thick that it cannot flow to the oil pump fast enough, so it just creates a big hole. So you basically got oil pressure, no oil pressure, oil pressure, no oil pressure, oil pressure, no oil pressure. And even when it gets warmed up, that oil is just so thick that it plugs everything up. It's, you know, there's a reason why they put numbers on cars for oil weight recommendations. You know, most of the new cars are 530, is because the tolerances are so close on the engines that that's the oil that they have done their extensive testing and says this oil works best in this engine. Can you go to a 1040? Yeah, you can go to a 1040. When you get 50,000 miles on it, can you go to a 2050? You know, in the summertime only. But if you start flipping check engine lights, or the oil pressure starts acting goofy with 2050 in it, get it out of there, because that's probably your problem. But anyways, I went ahead and took my tensioner out, took it apart, put it in the parts washer, and you pump it. And it's just like a pump ball. It sucks oil in, pumps it out, sucks oil in, and I cleaned it out really good, cleaned it all up, made sure it's working right. And the easiest way to do that is you take this take the intake camshaft off with the tensioner. You leave the exhaust side in, That way you're not messing with the timing belt. And then you put it back together the same way. And the way these things are made, from this timing mark is pointing at a tooth, okay? From this tooth on this side to this tooth on this side, there should be 16 rollers. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 rollers, and I'm right on the tooth, on that side of the tooth of that mark. Don't worry about when you stick it together first if the marks are lined up here or they're off a little bit, because what's going to happen is once you turn it over and that thing pumps up, it's going to line everything up. As long as you have 16 rollers from the inside of this mark to the inside of this mark, 16 rollers, you're in good shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to finish putting the cam journals on, snug them up. I put some gear oil on them. Not gear oil, but some assembly lube type of oil. This is what I use. It's Lucas. I just put a little dab on each journal, stick the cap on it. Then we'll go ahead and we will not even put the valve cover on. We will put the sensor, or the Hall effects on the front of the cam. We'll put the plugs in it. We'll stick the cam, or the spark plugs in it, stick the plug boots in it, plug everything up, put some good oil in it, and then what I'm going to do before I even do that is I'm just going to crank it over and crank it over and crank it over and crank it over and see if I can get some oil pressure built up with the plugs out. And then if I can get some oil pressure built up, I'll take the oil pressure sending unit out and see if it squirts out. If it does, you know, we need to get some of that oil, that gear oil, cleared out of that oil filter housing. You know, it may have plugged up the oil cooler, I don't know. That'll be the next thing I'll pull off, is the oil cooler, and then put it in the parts washer and clean it up. But all right, that's the goal for right now, and we'll see if we can quiet this motor up a little bit.